Alright, this is a Mori sl1, and I have looked and looked and looked trying to figure out how to fix this thing, but this is the problem that I have had. This turret, when I would tell the computer I want tool number 1 or tool number 8, and it would rotate around. Here, let me do this. There, it would rotate around to halfway between tool, say I said tool 1, it would be between tool 1 and tool 2. And I never could figure out exactly why it was doing that. So I ended up taking the motor off, so this motor turns, which in turn turns this gear. So if you notice, I'm turning the gear. Nothing's moving. Well, now I'm starting to feel a little resistance, and I'm turning it some more. Now you see the turret moving as I turn this gear. So if I keep turning it, I'm going to get to tool 1 here in just a minute. And if you notice, still turning the gear, turret has stopped turning. So I am now kind of in line with my spindle, finally. It took me a while to figure this out. I ended up buying this from eBay for 50 bucks. But this schematic shows that this is a cover. I never could figure out how to get this cover off. I messed with it and messed with it. There were 3 Allen bolts that went in there. So this is what I ended up doing. I made this plate, put it on my plasma table, drilled and tapped these holes, and then I screwed in. I couldn't find a bolt that was the actual correct thread pitch, but I had these little something for inserts that I got in a bag of something I bought from somebody years ago, and it just happened to be the right thread. So I threaded that down into it and used that as a nut, and lo and behold, that's how I pulled it out. I basically made a pulley puller to pull that off. But we put a wrench, and you can see where I put something on there, and it just scarred it up, made a mess of it. But that was the way I pulled it off. I just started running bolts in, and it pulled it right straight out. I couldn't find anything on the internet about this particular problem. Everybody said to look at these sensors back here. And just so you know, the way that works... Oh shoot, I lost the part. I've got a... Oh, there it is. Back here, let me move this. So, these sensors bolt up here, and so they're along this area here, and you see these little metal tabs right here. This rotates into a certain direction, so you lock it down with these nuts right here, and this would read like A and E, and that tells the computer when it sees these 2 sensors lit up where these 2 are positioned, that is tool 1. But it has to be in that, I guess, lack of a better word, that flat spot. So if you notice, I'm rotating the tools again, and it's rotating over. So what I ended up figuring out, see, there's that flat spot. I'm still rotating it, and this is not moving. What I ended up figuring out is, once I got the cover off, you take, see if I can get you some light in there. You take those 3 Allen, there's a nut here that someone had taken off, and this keeps it's supposed to keep the nut from rotating, but somebody had messed this up at some point. This was loose, wasn't even really being used for anything, and I took the nut off, took those 3 Allen screws out right there, and this whole turret will slide out. And basically what had happened is somebody had taken this apart, and when they pulled this out, they never, when they put this back on, they put it on a tooth off. So basically that put me half the distance from center line. So I was halfway in between this tool and this tool instead of on the center line of the tool like I should have been. So there's nothing on the internet that I could find that even remotely got me to this point. A really good guy that I've been dealing with sent me this. So you see the sensors the way they're supposed to be around the sensor block, and then this tells you, you know, so if A and B, then tool number 1. So this has a centroid controller, and if I do Alt-I here, this gives me all of my inputs. So if you notice, if I scroll over to say, okay, see the 8, that is tool A, the 9 is tool B, the 10, or actually that's 20, so you've got 1 through 9, this is 11 or 10 through 19, and the 2 is 20, 21, 22, 23. You get the idea. So when they turn red, so for instance 3 over here, well, that's not really tool E. If I were to put a piece of metal in front of, well, let me just do it. So here is tool A. Yeah. Anyway, you can test it by taking your screwdriver and sticking it up to it like that, and that'll tell, and you can feel that it's magnetic. And essentially those magnets are what tell this. So you will see like this one turn red and this one turn red, and then by this it'll tell you this is tool, you know, 5 or whatever. So now that I have this put on here, I've got to put all this back together, and I'll have to reorient this to the correct position of whatever tool this is on. So currently I'm on tool 4 here. So this is tool 4, and what I've got to do is I've got to spin this around. Once I put all of these back in place, I have to spin this around until I find that it lights up the correct 2 sensors to tell it that it's on tool 4. So at least now I am, it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm basically on center line with my tool. Before, it would be, when I would tell it, you know, whatever tool, it would be rotated halfway through the rotation, which would put the tool like right here. So it was so far off center line, it wasn't even really usable. But you have to do it when you're on that, well, I say flat spot, but this gear turns a worm gear in here, which in turn turns another gear. And if you look at this diagram, so see, this gear turns all of this into that worm gear, which turns this spline gear here. And essentially what it's doing is, if you see right here, there will be a pin. See that pin? It goes in there, and that pin rides in these slots right here. And then this actually turns that spline that the turret is riding on. So what happens is that pin comes around, hits one of those notches, and it rotates it around a certain amount. Well, then when the pin comes back through this way, it's rotating. This right here is still rotating, but the pin is no longer engaging this gear. So that's your flat spot, so to speak, that essentially tells that that's where you need to be on tool 1, tool 2, tool 3, tool 4, or whatever. And what had happened is this, oh, actually it's not this one, it's this one. So this is the spline. See, there's the gear. Oh, shoot. There's the gear I was talking about. That pin hits right here, and that in turn turns this gear, and here's the spline shaft that actually goes into your turret here. So you can't see it on this paper, but there's a line that kind of shows you how all of this stuff lines up into there. So by pulling this turret off of this spline right here, and then just rotating it over one tooth and sliding it back on, I now have a functional lathe, hopefully. So I've just got to put all this crap back together, and then I can start making parts. So anyway, I hope I can help some other mori owner out there one day, because I beat my head against the wall on this for a really long time. I got everything working except for this, and I couldn't figure out how to get that stupid center cap off, which I guess if it was in there good. You could have, I took a huge, I mean like a 17-inch pair of channel locks, and I put on it, and I mean it was not budging. But by making this simple tool, now all this is a piece of plate with 3 holes that are the correct spacing, and 3 holes that I just went out further to clear this, and then I just drilled and tapped those holes. I cut this on my plasma table. It gave me the 3 clearance holes that I could run my bolts down into, and then I just drilled and tapped these holes out to get me a way to push this away from the turret. So that did the job. I'm gonna head up to Fastenal tomorrow, and it uses these, I think it's these Allen screws. So I'm going to take one of these up there and see if they can give me some longer ones that I can kind of get it in there and get it lined up, and then let it pull in and get it sucked up in there. So these bolts, I can't see, they go in here, so that would be in these holes here. Anyway, so hope that helps somebody, because it cost me $50 to get the schematic to figure out that that little round thing actually did come out. So hope that helps somebody. Have a good day. Bye.